Respected, there is a quiet power in a man who has lived, who has fallen, who has risen again, and who no longer speaks to impress, but speaks to be understood. And when such a man opens his mouth, he doesn't chase attention, he enters her world, her mind, her heart without force, without noise, just presence. There is something most young men misunderstand. They believe attraction is loud. They think it lives in flashy words, bold promises, and constant proving. But the truth is quieter, deeper, almost invisible to the untrained eye. Because what truly reaches her, what truly stays, is not what you say loudly, but what you say truthfully. An older man, a wise man, does not try to get inside her, in the way the world foolishly defines it. He doesn't chase entry, he earns trust, and trust is the only door that opens from the inside. You see, when a man has experienced enough life, he begins to understand something very few ever do. That words are not tools to control someone, they are bridges to connect, and the way he speaks changes. Not because he's learned lines, but because life has softened his ego and sharpened his awareness. He no longer says, "I can't live without you," because he knows that sounds like love but feels like pressure. Instead, he says, "I choose you not because I need you, but because you bring peace into my life." And that one shift, that one sentence carries more weight than 1,000 empty promises, because a woman doesn't open up to desperation. She opens up to stability. An older man knows this. He knows that when he speaks, he must not take something from her, he must give something to her. Safety, clarity, emotional calm, these are the currencies that truly matter. And so when he says, "Take your time, I'm not here to rush you," something inside her relaxes. Walls that were built over years begin to crack, not because he forced them down, but because he gave them permission to fall. This is where most men fail. They think intensity is attraction. They think urgency creates desire. But urgency often feels like pressure, and pressure creates resistance. A wise man removes pressure. He replaces it with patience, and patience is incredibly attractive. There is a certain calm in his voice, a certain steadiness in his presence. He doesn't over-explain, he doesn't overpromise. He simply says what he means and means what he says. When he looks at her, he doesn't just see her beauty, he acknowledges her mind. He says things like, "I admire the way you think," or "You carry yourself with a strength that's rare." And suddenly she feels seen, not looked at, but understood. And understanding is one of the deepest forms of connection. You see, attraction that is built on surface fades, but attraction that is built on emotional recognition grows roots. It stays, it deepens. It becomes something far more powerful than temporary desire. An older man has learned to listen. Truly listen, not just to respond, but to understand what is being said and what is not being said. He hears the pauses. He notices the shifts in tone. He pays attention to the emotions behind the words. And when he responds, he doesn't dismiss her feelings. He doesn't try to fix everything immediately. Sometimes he simply says, "I hear you." And in those 3 simple words, he creates a space where she feels safe to be herself. That's how he gets inside her world, not by breaking doors, but by becoming someone she willingly invites in. And there is another thing, something subtle, yet incredibly powerful. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't seek approval in every interaction. He is comfortable with himself, comfortable with silence, comfortable with not always being liked. Because he understands that when a man is secure within himself, his words carry a different energy. They don't beg, they don't cling, they stand firmly, calmly, and that presence becomes magnetic. When he says, "I respect you," it doesn't feel like a line. It feels real because his actions match his words. Consistency, this is something he never negotiates. He doesn't speak beautifully one day and disappear the next. He shows up again and again, not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. And consistency builds trust faster than charm ever could. There is a certain maturity in the way he expresses interest. He doesn't overwhelm her with constant messages or exaggerated emotions. He gives space, but not distance. He shows care, but not neediness, and in that balance, something powerful happens. She begins to think about him, not because he demanded attention, but because his presence felt different, real, grounded, safe, and safety is not boring. It is misunderstood. Because true safety does not remove excitement, it removes fear. And when fear is gone, real connection has room to grow. An older man understands timing. He knows when to speak, and when silence is more powerful. He doesn't interrupt her moments. He doesn't force conversations. He allows things to unfold naturally, because he has learned that forcing anything in life only leads to something fragile. And he is no longer interested in fragile things. He wants something real. So when he says, "I'm here not to change you, but to understand you," it lands differently. It reaches deeper, because it comes from a place of truth, not strategy. And truth has a way of bypassing all defenses. This is what younger men often miss. They try to impress her with what they have. An older man connects with who he is. There is no performance, no mask, just presence, and presence is rare. In a world full of noise, distractions, and endless proving, a man who is fully present becomes unforgettable. He doesn't need to say too much, because what he says matters, and what he doesn't say speaks even louder. He doesn't rush intimacy. He builds it slowly, carefully, with intention, because he knows that anything built too quickly often collapses just as fast. So instead of saying, "Tell me everything about you," he says, "Share what you feel comfortable sharing. I'll meet you where you are." And that creates trust. Trust is not demanded, it is earned, and he earns it one moment at a time. You see, getting inside someone's heart is not about clever words. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about understanding human nature. It's about knowing that every person carries invisible scars, and the way you speak can either reopen them or help them heal. An older man chooses to heal. Even in disagreement, he remains calm. He doesn't raise his voice to prove a point. He listens, he considers, and when he speaks, he does so with respect, because he knows respect is not just given in peaceful moments, it is proven in difficult ones. And that's when she begins to trust him even more, because she sees this is not a man driven by ego. This is a man guided by awareness, and awareness is attractive in a way that cannot be faked. He doesn't try to be perfect. He acknowledges his flaws, he owns his mistakes, and when he apologizes, it is sincere, not defensive. Not forced, because accountability builds emotional safety, and emotional safety is where real connection lives. So when he says, "I may not always get it right, but I will always be honest with you," she believes him. Because his actions have already proven it. This is the difference. Words alone don't enter her world. Aligned actions do, and the older man understands this deeply. He has learned that love is not about control. It is not about winning. It is not about being right. It is about understanding. And when a man understands, truly understands, he doesn't need to push his way into her life. She opens the door herself because she feels it, the calm, the clarity, the consistency, the truth. And that is how he gets inside her world without ever forcing his way in. There comes a moment in life when a man stops trying to be impressive and starts becoming impactful. And that shift changes everything, because impact doesn't come from trying to be liked. It comes from being real. An older man has already played the games most people are still stuck in. He has chased, he has tried to prove, he has worn the mask of perfection. And somewhere along that journey, he realized something quietly powerful, that the more he tried to impress, the less he was truly seen. So he stopped. He let go of the need to perform and stepped into the courage of being authentic. And when he speaks now, there is no hidden agenda behind his words. No manipulation, no strategy, just truth, and truth has a weight to it that cannot be ignored. When he says, "I don't want to waste your time," it doesn't feel like distance, it feels like respect. When he says, "I vow you peace more than drama," it doesn't feel boring, it feels grounding, because deep down, she has already experienced enough chaos to recognize the beauty of calm. You see, an older man doesn't sell dreams, he offers reality. And reality, when it is stable and honest, becomes far more attractive than fantasy. He doesn't promise forever in the beginning. He doesn't rush into declarations that sound beautiful but carry no foundation. Instead, he says, "Let's see where this goes with honesty," and that honesty creates space for something real to grow. Because pressure disappears, and in its place, curiosity begins. She starts to lean in not because she's being pulled, but because she feels safe to explore. And this is where his words begin to reach deeper. He doesn't just ask, "How was your day?" He asks, "What made you smile today?" Or "What's been on your mind lately?" And suddenly, the conversation shifts from surface to substance. Because he is not interested in routine answers, he is interested in her inner world. And when a woman feels that someone is genuinely curious about her thoughts, not just her appearance or her availability, something inside her begins to open. Slowly, naturally, without fear, an older man knows that connection is not built through constant talking. It is built through meaningful exchange, so he doesn't fill every silence. He allows pauses. He gives her space to think, to feel, to express. And in those pauses, she feels respected. Because not every moment needs to be controlled. Some moments need to be felt. There is also a quiet confidence in the way he expresses desire. He doesn't hide it, but he doesn't let it dominate either. He doesn't reduce her to a moment of attraction. He elevates her beyond it. When he says, "I'm drawn to you not just for how you look, but for how you carry yourself," it lands differently. Because it touches something deeper than the surface. It acknowledges her presence, her energy, her essence. And that kind of recognition is rare, because most people only see what is visible. Few take the time to understand what is felt. An older man feels, he senses when something is off, he notices when her energy shifts, and instead of ignoring it or reacting impulsively, he addresses it with calm awareness. He might say, "You seem a little distant today. Is everything okay?" Not in a demanding way, but in a caring one. And that question opens a door because it shows attentiveness, it shows presence, it shows that he is not just there physically, but emotionally. And emotional presence is one of the most powerful forms of attraction. You see, when a man becomes emotionally available without being emotionally overwhelming, he creates a balance that feels safe and exciting at the same time. She doesn't feel suffocated, but she doesn't feel neglected either. She feels considered, and being considered is deeply attractive. There is also a discipline in the way he communicates. He doesn't react out of anger. He doesn't send messages in the heat of emotion that he will later regret. He pauses, he reflects, and then he responds, because he understands that words once spoken cannot be taken back. And so he chooses them carefully, not to manipulate, but to protect the connection. Because connection once broken is not easily repaired. An older man has learned the value of emotional control, not suppression, but control. He feels deeply, but he doesn't let his emotions control his behavior. And that stability creates trust. When he says, "We can talk about this calmly," even in moments of tension, she feels reassured. Because she knows this is a man who will not turn every disagreement into a battle. He is not here to win arguments. He is here to build understanding, and that intention changes everything. Because when two people feel safe to express without fear of attack, real communication begins. And real communication builds real connection. He also knows the importance of boundaries. He doesn't abandon himself to please someone else. He doesn't say yes when he means no, and when he sets a boundary, he does it with respect, not aggression. He might say, I understand how you feel, but this is something I'm not comfortable with. And in that moment, he shows strength. Because true strength is not in control over others, it is in control over oneself. And when a woman sees that a man respects himself, she is more likely to respect him too. Respect is the foundation of lasting attraction. Without it, everything else eventually fades. An older man does not beg for attention. He does not chase validation. He lives his life with purpose and invites her into it rather than building his life around her. And that independence is incredibly attractive because it shows that his happiness is not dependent but shared. He chooses her, but he does not need her to complete him, and that difference is everything because neediness pushes people away, but choice draws them closer. There is also a depth in the way he expresses appreciation. He doesn't take small things for granted. He notices effort. He acknowledges presence. He might say, I appreciate the way you handled that situation, or I respect your honesty, and those words create value. Because appreciation makes a person feel seen, and feeling seen creates connection, he doesn't wait for special moments to express it. He understands that it is the small, consistent acknowledgments that build emotional closeness, because big gestures may impress, but small gestures connect. And connection is what lasts. An older man also understands timing in vulnerability. He doesn't unload his entire past at once. He shares gradually, thoughtfully, in a way that builds trust, not overwhelm. When he opens up, it is not to seek pity, but to create understanding. He might say, I've been through things that taught me to value honesty more than anything, and in that simple statement there is depth, because it hints at experience without burdening the moment, and that balance keeps the connection steady. He knows that vulnerability is powerful, but only when it is shared with awareness. Too much, too soon, creates imbalance. But honest, gradual openness builds trust, and trust is the gateway to emotional intimacy. This is how he moves. Calmly, intentionally, with awareness, not rushing, not forcing, not pretending. And as time passes, she begins to feel something she may not have felt in a long time. Peace, not the kind that is boring, but the kind that feels like home. Because in his presence, she doesn't have to overthink. She doesn't have to question intentions. She doesn't have to guard herself constantly. She can just be. And that is rare, because in a world full of confusion and mixed signals, clarity becomes deeply attractive. And an older man offers clarity through his words and consistency through his actions. That is how he reaches her. That is how he stays, not through force, not through tricks, but through truth. And truth always finds its way in. There is a depth that only time can teach, a kind of emotional intelligence that cannot be rushed, cannot be borrowed, cannot be faked. And when a man reaches that level, his words begin to carry something more than meaning. They carry intention. An older man no longer speaks just to fill space. He speaks to build something, and every sentence he chooses either strengthens the connection or protects it. Because he has learned, often the hard way, that the wrong words at the wrong time can damage something that took months, even years, to create. So he slows down, he becomes more aware, more present, more intentional when he tells her, I don't want perfection, I want something real. It doesn't sound like a cliche. It sounds like a decision. A man who has seen enough illusions to finally value truth. And truth is where real connection lives. You see, younger men often chase excitement. They think attraction must always feel like a spark, like intensity, like constant highs. But an older man understands something deeper. He understands that what lasts is not intensity. It is stability. Because intensity fades, but stability grows. So instead of trying to impress her with constant excitement, he creates something far more valuable: emotional grounding. When life becomes overwhelming, when her thoughts feel heavy, when her world feels uncertain, his words become a place of calm. He might say, "You don't have to carry everything alone," and suddenly the weight feels lighter, because he doesn't just offer presence in good moments. He offers presence in difficult ones, and that builds trust on a deeper level, because anyone can be there when things are easy. But only a few stay grounded when things are not. An older man stays, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. He knows that real connection is not tested in perfect moments, it is revealed in imperfect ones, and so when conflict arises, he does not disappear. He does not shut down, he does not react impulsively. He leans in calmly, he listens fully, and when he speaks, his goal is not to defend himself, but to understand her. He might say, "Help me see your perspective." And in that moment, something shifts, because she realizes this is not a man who wants to win. This is a man who wants to grow, and growth is incredibly attractive, because it shows that the connection is not static. It is evolving, it is becoming something better with time. There is also a quiet strength in the way he handles uncertainty. He does not demand constant reassurance. He does not panic when things are not defined immediately. He allows space for things to develop naturally, because he understands that anything forced into definition too early often breaks under pressure. So instead of asking, "What are we?" too soon, he focuses on building something that eventually answers that question on its own, through consistency, through presence, through truth, and as time passes, the connection defines itself. Without pressure, without confusion, just clarity. An older man also knows the value of emotional safety in silence. He understands that not every moment needs to be filled with conversation. Sometimes sitting together quietly is more powerful than words. Because comfort in silence reflects comfort in presence, and presence is what creates depth. He doesn't fear pauses. He respects them because he knows that in those quiet moments, emotions settle, thoughts align, and connection deepens. There is something that often goes unnoticed. He does not try to be everything for her. He does not promise to solve every problem. He does not position himself as the center of her world. Instead, he supports her independence, he encourages her growth, he respects her individuality. When he says, "I admire the life you're building," it shows that he is not trying to take over her journey, he is appreciating it, and that creates a different kind of attraction. Because she doesn't feel controlled, she feels supported, and support builds trust, control destroys it. An older man has learned this. He has seen what happens when ego tries to dominate connection. It breaks it. So he chooses humility, not weakness, but humility, the kind that allows space for two people to exist without overpowering each other. And in that balance, something rare is created, a connection where both individuals feel valued, not diminished. He also understands that attraction is not maintained through grand gestures alone. It is maintained through emotional consistency, through showing up, through being reliable, through being present even in small ways, a simple message at the right time, a thoughtful word when it matters, a calm response when emotions are high. These small actions build something strong, because consistency is what turns moments into meaning, and meaning is what creates lasting connection. There is a certain honesty in the way he expresses his feelings. He does not hide behind sarcasm. He does not mask his intentions with confusion. When he cares, he says it. When he values her, he shows it. But he does it with balance, not overwhelming, not distant. Just real. He might say, "I enjoy what we have and I want to see where it goes." And in that sentence, there is clarity. No games, no guessing, just truth, and truth removes anxiety. because uncertainty often creates overthinking. But clarity creates peace. An older man chooses clarity, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. For something real to grow, he also understands the importance of self-reflection. He doesn't just look at what she could do better. He looks at himself. He asks, how can I communicate better? How can I understand more? How can I grow in this connection? And that mindset changes everything, because it removes blame and replaces it with responsibility. And responsibility builds trust, because she sees this is a man who is willing to evolve, not just expect. And that willingness creates emotional safety, because growth becomes shared, not one-sided. There is also a quiet patience in him. He does not rush outcomes. He does not force feelings. He allows things to unfold, because he knows that real connection cannot be manufactured. It must be nurtured, slowly, gently, with care, and as time passes, something beautiful begins to form, not loud, not dramatic, but deep. A connection built on trust, respect, understanding, and truth. And that kind of connection does not fade easily, because it is not built on surface. It is built on substance, and substance lasts. This is the difference. This is how an older man speaks, how he shows up, how he connects. Not to impress, but to understand. Not to chase, but to build. Not to force his way in, but to become someone she naturally lets in. Because when a man reaches that level of awareness, he no longer asks for entry into her world. He becomes someone she wants to share it with. And then there comes a moment where everything he has been, everything he has learned, everything he has chosen to become, begins to reveal itself not in grand declarations, but in quiet certainty, because an older man does not build connection through words alone. He builds it through alignment. What he says matches what he does, and what he does reflects who he is. There are no contradictions, no mixed signals, no emotional confusion, just clarity. And clarity is rare in a world where so many speak without meaning, promise without intention, and show up without consistency. But he is different, not because he is perfect, but because he is aware of the impact of his presence, aware of the responsibility of his words, aware of the emotional space he occupies in her life. So when he tells her, you can trust me, he doesn't rush to prove it in one moment. He proves it over time, through consistency, through patience, through showing up even when it is not convenient. Because trust is not built in intensity, it is built in repetition, and repetition creates belief. She begins to notice it, the way he doesn't disappear when things become uncertain, the way he doesn't change his tone when emotions rise, the way he remains steady even when situations are not. And in that steadiness, she finds something she didn't even realize she was searching for. Security, not control, not possession, but emotional security, the kind that allows her to relax, to open to be fully present without fear of being misunderstood or mishandled. Because she knows this is a man who will not weaponize her vulnerability. He will protect it, and protection in its purest form is not about dominance. It is about care, it is about awareness, it is about choosing not to harm even when you have the power to. An older man understands this deeply. He has seen what careless words can do. He has experienced what inconsistency can break. So he chooses differently, not because he has to, but because he wants to, because he values connection more than ego. And that choice reflects in everything he says. When she shares something personal, something delicate, something that carries emotional weight, he doesn't interrupt. He doesn't dismiss. He doesn't rush to respond. He listens fully. And when he finally speaks, his words are measured, thoughtful, intentional. He might say, "Thank you for trusting me with that." And in that moment, something powerful happens. She feels safe, not judged, not exposed, but understood. And understanding is the doorway to emotional intimacy. You see, intimacy is not created through proximity. It is created through trust, and trust is created through emotional safety. An older man does not take that lightly. He treats her thoughts, her feelings, her experiences with respect, because he knows that what she shares with him is not just information. It is vulnerability, and vulnerability must be handled with care. He also knows when to step back, not out of disinterest, but out of respect for space. He understands that closeness is not about constant presence. It is about meaningful presence, so he gives her room to breathe, room to think, room to be, and in that space, she does not feel abandoned. She feels trusted because he is not trying to control her attention. He is allowing the connection to exist freely. And freedom strengthens what control destroys. There is also a deep honesty in the way he faces difficult conversations. He does not avoid them. He does not delay them. He approaches them with calmness, with respect, with clarity. He might say, "We need to talk about something important," not with tension, but with intention, because he understands that avoiding discomfort only creates distance. But facing it creates understanding, and understanding keeps the connection alive. He does not raise his voice to be heard. He speaks with calm authority, not to dominate, but to communicate, because communication is not about volume. It is about clarity, and clarity builds trust. An older man also knows when to walk away, and this is perhaps one of the most powerful things he has learned. Not every connection is meant to last. Not every person is meant to stay, and forcing something that lacks alignment only creates pain. So when he recognizes that something is not right, he does not cling. He does not beg. He does not lose himself trying to hold on. He simply says, "I respect what we had, but I need something different," and walks away with dignity. Because he understands that self-respect is not negotiable, and a man who respects himself will never settle for less than what aligns with his values. And strangely, even in leaving, there is respect, because he does not destroy what once mattered. He honors it and moves forward, and that leaves a lasting impression, because people may forget words spoken in emotion, but they remember actions taken with integrity. And integrity is unforgettable. This is the essence of a man who has grown, who has learned, who has evolved beyond the noise, beyond the games, beyond the need to prove. He no longer tries to get inside her world through force, through tactics, through manipulation. He enters through truth, through presence, through consistency, through emotional intelligence. And when he speaks, he doesn't just reach her ears. He reaches her mind, her emotions, her sense of safety, her sense of understanding, and slowly, naturally, without pressure, he becomes someone she trusts, someone she respects, someone she feels connected to on a level that goes beyond words, because what he offers is not temporary attraction. It is lasting connection, and that is what truly matters. And so, after all the lessons, all the patience, all the quiet moments and measured words, we arrive at the truth. The truth that every man seeking connection must understand. It is not force that opens hearts. It is awareness. It is presence. It is respect. It is the steady, intentional actions that reflect who you truly are. An older man who speaks with wisdom, who moves with patience, who chooses truth over ego he does not chase. He does not manipulate. He does not demand. He becomes someone a woman wants to invite into her world, not because of flashy words or clever tactics, but because of the depth of his character. His consistency, his respect, his understanding, these are the doors he opens quietly and profoundly. And in that space, connection becomes real, trust becomes natural, intimacy grows without fear. Love, in its purest form, blossoms not from pressure or performance, but from authenticity, from alignment, from the courage to simply be present with honesty and care. So, if you seek to be remembered, if you seek to truly reach someone's heart, focus on who you are becoming. not on how fast you can enter their life. Cultivate patience, cultivate awareness, cultivate respect. Speak with intention, act with integrity, and move through life with calm confidence. Because when you do, you will discover that real connection cannot be forced, cannot be fabricated, cannot be bought. It is earned, nurtured, and honored, and it lasts far beyond fleeting attraction. It becomes something timeless, something grounding, something powerful enough to shape both of your lives in ways words alone could never capture. Be the man who enters not through noisy, but through truth, not through strategy, but through presence, not through insistence, but through the quiet, unwavering power of authenticity. That is how you leave a mark. That is how you become unforgettable. That is how you truly get inside her world. And that is the legacy of a life lived with wisdom, patience, and heart.